Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for registering and attending this Global Tech Summit on Career Advancement through Technologies and DevOps. This is being conducted by both Amal Jyothi College of Engineering, Kanjirapalli, and Marian College, Kuttikkanam Autonomous, in association with Red Hat, IPSR Solutions Limited, and Valin, UK, US, and Canada. We would like to welcome the managers of both Marian College and Amal Jyothi, the principal of Marian College, Kuttikkanam, Dr. Achuman George, and the principal of Amal Jyothi College of Engineering, Dr. Yudhikudi Jacob, and Father Dr. Ruben Todapurtha, HOD, Department of Computer Applications of Amal Jyothi College, and Dr. Mendes Jacob, Director, PG Department of Computer Applications of Marian College. We would also like to welcome Mr. Sreejith Anujan, also the Red Hat team, Mr. Ramesh Padmanabhan, Director, Red Hat GLS India and SAR, Geoman Joseph, Partner Manager, Red Hat GLS, managers, directors, principals, vice principals, representatives from management, HODs, IQAC coordinators, placement officers, RHCA managers, faculty managers, working professionals, students, everyone from Red Hat, IPSR, and Valin. Let me tell you about this Global Tech Summit. This is actually our second day of the Global Tech Summit. The topic for the first day was on career advancement through Red Hat technology. Today's topic will be career advancement through DevOps. All the participants who are attending this and who have also registered for this Global Tech Summit will receive the video recordings of both the days, and also a participation certificate will be provided. You will get the details of this to your registered email through which you had actually registered. My name is Sreejith Jacob George. I'm the Global Relations Manager with IPSR Solutions Limited. I will be your event moderator, and few housekeeping rules to tell you before we start off with this session. If you have any questions to the presenter, please put the questions in the Q&A section, not in the chat, okay? In the Q&A section, you will see that in your interface, okay? So just put it in the Q&A section, and we will pick them in between, maybe answer them towards the end as well, okay? So you will be muted. You won't be able to unmute yourself and speak. So you can just post them as text into your Q&As. Now, let me move on with the introductions. Let me talk about Amal Jyothi College of Engineering, Kanjirapalli. Amal Jyothi College of Engineering, Kanjirapalli is the first engineering college in Kerala to obtain NAC accreditation with A grade, and the first new generation engineering college in the state to secure the prestigious NB accreditation for prime departments. HSE is also the top most MCA college at the APJ Abdul Kalam Technology University. Along with the academic curriculum, students of HSE get the opportunity to do the international certification program RHCA through the Red Hat Academy program. About Marian College Kuttikkanam Autonomous. Marian College Kuttikkanam was founded in 1995 and is owned and managed by the Catholic Diocese of Kanjirapalli. Marian College has gained autonomous status in a span of just 20 years, youngest college to achieve this status. Marian College is the first campus in Kerala to become the Red Hat Academy by entering an MOU with Red Hat, the world's largest open source company. In 2017, Marian College won the Red Hat Academy of the Year award. MCA at Marian is listed among one of the top 10 promising MCA programs in India by Higher Education Review. Now let me move on to a brief description about Red Hat. Red Hat Incorporated is an American multinational software company and the world's leading provider of enterprise open source solutions, using a community-powered approach to deliver high-performing Linux, cloud, container, and Kubernetes technology. Red Hat helps you standardize across environments, develop cloud-native applications, and integrate, automate, secure, and manage complex environments with award-winning support, training, and consulting services. Founded in 1993, Red Hat has its corporate headquarters in Raleigh, North Carolina, with other offices in 105 plus locations of 40 plus countries. It became a subsidiary of IBM in 2019. More than 90% of Fortune 500 companies rely on Red Hat technologies. In 2012, Red Hat became the first open source technology company to surpass more than $1 billion in revenue. Red Hat has become the logical choice for anyone working in enterprise IT who needs rapid innovation and wants to avoid the risk of doing it all themselves. Now let me move on to IPSR Solutions Limited. IPSR Solutions Limited is led by a team of academicians and entrepreneurs. IPSR is a public limited company with 22 plus years of expertise in software product development, training, placement, and digital marketing services. During the last 2 decades, IPSR has worked with over 500 academic organizations, including government universities, autonomous colleges, and technical and non-technical institutions. The training division of IPSR conducts faculty development training programs, seminars, workshops, value-added certification courses, finishing school programs, corporate training, job-oriented training in education, IT and IT-enabled services domain. IPSR is the world's leading Red Hat training and certification partner with 37 national and international awards and produce the highest number of Red Hat professionals in the world. So far, IPSR has trained candidates from 60 plus countries. Our IT services division is a pioneer in development of academic solutions products, incorporating cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence, data analytics, and machine learning. IPSR offers specialized services and solutions for the academic sector, ranging from simple websites to complex software applications that help to manage academic and operational activities like question paper generation, campus automation, accreditation process, NAC, NBA, etc. OB as well, outcome-based education. IPSR placement division has over 1,600 placement type of companies and conducts recruitment on all days. Now about Valin. Valin is an IT company registered in the UK, US, and Canada that brings next generation innovation and value to managed IT services, which is delivered seamlessly through prompt end-to-end solutions and global service delivery channels. That's about all the introduction. Now we will move on to our main session. Today's presentation will be done by Mr. Sreejith Anujan, who is an RHCA and RHCI, is a principal instructor with Red Hat Asia Pacific. And today's topic will be career advancement through DevOps. And Mr. Sreejith Anujan, let me just give you a brief description about Sreejith Anujan. Sreejith Anujan is a cloud technology professional with more than 15 years of experience in on-premise and public cloud providers, an open source evangelist, and an expert in advocating the requirements of automation and containerization technologies on hybrid cloud environments to enterprise customers in achieving better ROI and business demands. Sreejith, in his current role as lead technical instructor, is responsible for designing and delivering custom and tailored technology training and workshops to Red Hat strategic customers across APAC, ANZ, and APJ. Over to you, Sreejith.
So thank you so much, Sijin. I believe I'm audible and you can see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So thanks everyone for joining. I see around 300 plus attendees. So appreciate all of you taking time. I hope most of you have joined from Asian subcontinent. So it will be mostly late afternoon for you, for some of you, and evening for some of you who joined from India region. So appreciate spending time with us. So I believe some of you have attended Ramesh session yesterday on focusing more on Red Hat technologies. But today, as you see in the screen, I'll be speaking about some career advancement through DevOps. Okay, I'm hoping that many of you have heard about DevOps. So I'm not going to talk about what is DevOps and all, but will share some experiences from my 14 years of experience in Red Hat and beyond, and working with customers on what is expected from you if you are actually going to embark on your journey with DevOps as a career option. Okay, so moving ahead, I just wanted to show you some agenda, what to expect in the next 1 hour or so. So I will speak through some of the core DevOps roles and the responsibilities associated with the role, and some of the skills required for a successful DevOps journey. Okay, and when I speak about DevOps roles and responsibilities, I will also speak about some of the tools which are widely used within the DevOps umbrella. So we'll show you some demo of maybe 2 or 3 tools. Okay. And finally, where to find resources and assistance. Okay, so as Sijin mentioned earlier, make sure that you use the question and answer tab within BlueJeans video conferencing tool. We have Geo, Sijin, and others who are actively looking at the questions, and you may be responded to immediately. But otherwise, I'm also planning to pause in between to take up questions so that we can make it highly interactive and lively as possible it can be. So with that, let me just actually start off with my slides. So I have around 20 plus slides, so I won't bore you with many slides, I promise. But let's start with some of the roles. Okay, right. So many of you might have heard about the DevOps evangelist role. Okay, so if you are hunting for a new job within the market, or you're planning to change roles within your current organization, right? Most of the job websites or portals, if you look and search for DevOps, you would see a role called as the evangelist. Okay, so it's more like a what you call a role which promote the benefits of DevOps within the organization, right? Like you will actually act as an ambassador. So that's why the word evangelist. You will act as an ambassador or influencer to embrace DevOps within the different teams within your organization. Now, when you talk about DevOps, there are a lot of what you call frameworks and methodologies which you can follow. Some of those are actually from Agile, some of are from traditional methods. But this role basically is aligned towards how you can make sure that the organization is actually embracing DevOps. So when I say organization, it is not just limited to technical people, but also for non-technical people. Like it could be the senior managers, the directors, the C-level and uh, influencers within the organization, right? And the most important thing is this role would actually generate enthusiasm and buy-in from different teams. The word buy-in, I purposefully italicized to make sure that it is a very critical responsibility of this role, right? To act as a bridge between different teams so that the collaboration among the teams would actually improve over a period of time, right? And also, you as an evangelist will identify what are the new roles which you can actually add in your existing team for a successful DevOps adoption. The new roles could be something which I'm talking right now, or it could be something which you develop just for your organization, right? So some people will call it as maybe DevOps engineer. Some people would say it as site reliability engineering, like that, right? And the most important functionality of this role and responsibility is to make sure that all members are adequately trained in the DevOps way of doing stuff, right? So it is not necessarily a technical role, but different technical tools knowledge would actually help in this role. Why I'm talking about this role is this is a very popular role which you see in the market these days. Okay, and it's a very broader role. So just because were an evangelist in one organization doesn't mean that it may work on a different organization, right? So every organization has its own policies and regulations to follow, right? So this role would actually be adapting to all those requirements and applying DevOps based principles. Okay. So I thought I would actually mention this role because this is a very popular role, and you will just not miss this role as part of the uh, job portals and job description. Now, like I said earlier, right, make sure that if you have any questions, post it in the Q&A field so that Geo and Sijin would actually be moderating it. And when I pause for questions, I can take it up immediately. Now, coming to another role which we see in many of our customers and within Red Hat is something called as automation architect. Okay. Now, one of the fundamental requirements for a successful DevOps adoption is using automation to do almost everything, right? So this automation architect's responsibility is to identify the manual tasks which are actually part of your existing workflow. And it could be tasks which you do on the infrastructure side. maybe on the servers, maybe creating virtual machines or containers, or even deploying applications, right? Or it could be in the development process, how the developers and quality assurance team do the day-to-day work. So if there are some manual tasks which are actually there, automation architect's responsibility is to identify those manual tasks and remove those manual tasks and make it automated. Now, how you make it automated, it again depends on what tool you use. Okay. So you need to have an informed decision-making process for migrating the manual task to automated. Not all manual tasks could be automated, right? There are some manual tasks which needs to be existing as a manual task. It may be like what? Before you push anything to production, you need to do some validation. It could still be manual. You cannot automate it, right? Again, it depends on the maturity of the organization, whether you can actually do automation end to end or you can do automation to your staging, right? And the most important responsibility of this automation architect is to identify the automation tools from different vendors, right? There are tools which can do all kinds of automation, right? But there are some tools which will actually work better in some solutions, but not on the other solutions, right? So you need to have a mix of multiple vendors and tools to have a successful automation across your infrastructure. Okay. The most difficult part of all of this is how you can document your automation artifacts, right? So if you're using automation tools like Ansible or maybe Chef or SaltStack, right? How do you consider that artifact itself as a document? So I'm sure that many of you may be experts in automation tools like Ansible or Chef or SaltStack or Terraform or any other tools which are popular in the market, right? So documentation itself is very important so that it could be reused and extended to different teams, even when you change your responsibilities later in the organization. From a technical perspective, this is a highly technical role, okay? And you should also have understanding of the different vendors, how they can be automated, what is the level of automation they can do, and you also needs to have some high-level overview of different cloud solutions, okay? It could be public cloud solutions like AWS, Azure, Google, Alibaba, etc., and also private cloud solutions like VMware, Red Hat, OpenStack, etc., etc. Right? But you must have understanding of these vendors and cloud solutions because most of the organizations these days are moving towards a hybrid model. When we talk about hybrid, right, they may be managing their own data centers or they may be opting for managed service providers. Or some of them actually start with public cloud and then slowly move towards on premises, right? So it's important to have an understanding of these different vendors and cloud solutions as part of this automation architect. And there are some cases where I have seen this role being mentioned as automation engineers also, okay? But architect seems to be more popular, right? Now, let me tell you, I'm not saying it's only for one tool, right? You probably may need to have uh, expertise or awareness of multiple automation tools, right? Gone are the days wherein people used to write bash scripts or Perl or Python scripts, right? Most of the automation happens with tools these days, like tools like Ansible or Chef or Puppet, right? Or Terraform for that matter, right? So it's not about just creating the automation based scripts, but also the awareness of using these tools, right? And that's one of the reasons many of these tools are available as a software as a service in or managed service in different cloud providers. So that was automation architect slash engineer. And again, for all of these roles, I just wanted to mention there are different levels. Okay, you may start with a junior automation architect, can move to senior, then principal, like that, right? But the core is about having a decision-making process on how to identify the manual task and migrating into an automated workflow. Okay. And moving to another interesting role, okay, application developer tester. So this is not a role which is very specific to DevOps. This role used to exist for a long time, right? Ever since software development started, right? But in with regards to DevOps, right? Uh, the application developer need to actually develop new products. Now it's not just about waiting for some requirements from a project manager and they start developing new products. Application developers should also be able to identify what the customers are looking for in that product, right? They should also have a business level understanding of why this new product is being developed, right? What is it going to do for the customer, right? It not, like I said, it's not just about a project manager coming and giving some instructions to the developers, and developer would actually work on some frameworks like Java, C++, or something and just develop products. They should also have some business level idea of why this product is being developed, right? And also the other responsibilities are, it's not just about building and developing and pushing it to production, right? The application needs to be maintained, right? You also need to enhance the existing applications with new features, especially for making sure that your products are used in the market, right? So if you look at all the applications which we use in our mobile, right, you see that every now and then that application vendors come out with some new features to stay competitive in the market, right? And like I said earlier, right, make sure that the new product or the new features are aligned with business requirements, right? So if you look at your applications which you use for your banking, right, day-to-day banking, or the e-wallet applications, right? Many of them have their own salient features. There is a reason why you use one over other, right? So all those features are very important and it aligns to what the customer needs. So as developers slash tester, you should be able to understand what business challenges it is going to solve, right? And also as a developer, right, you will also be responsible for building and writing the test suites, right? You may need to write your own features, unit tests, and make sure that it is automatically tested when you actually promote it from one uh, environment to another, maybe from dev to stage, or maybe from dev to uh, uh, testing, like that, right? So develop and run the test suites. Now, what test suite to use? It depends on the framework you use, right? So you should have a good knowledge about the different uh, what do you call, the latest frameworks which are actually used in the market these days, and then develop and run the test suite so that you can verify that the new features or the features which you developed in the product are working as expected, right? So there are different methodologies also, like some of you may have heard about something called as uh, test driven development, right? Wherein the developers would actually write the test, then write the feature to pass the test. Okay. So it's called as TDD, right? Many of you might have heard about something called as behavioral driven development, or BD, right? So all of these are actually part of this application developer slash tester responsibility. Okay, and not only that, maybe as part of a continuous integration, continuous delivery, deployment, etc., you may need to perform deployments in different environments. So what do you mean by different environments? You as a developer may develop in your what do you call, workstation or laptop, right? Maybe you need to push it to your cloud environment, right? A developer cloud environment, and from there, from the developer cloud environment, you need to promote it to your testing environment, run the automated test, and from the test you may need to promote it to staging, and maybe from staging to production there will be a different team who actually comes and releases that product to production, right? But it will be your responsibility as a developer to use that continuous development, continuous testing, and continuous delivery mechanism. So I'll talk about continuous integration, delivery, deployment, etc. later in my discussion. But make sure that you understand the responsibility of this role also to have performing deployments. Okay. And gone are the days wherein it is the responsibility of the system administrator to monitor the application performance. It is your responsibility as an application developer or tester to monitor your application's performance over a period of time. What do I mean by performance? How is it responding to the customer request? How many requests are being handled in a minute, right? What happens if the requests are not handled? Do we have a failback mechanism? Or should we actually rely on infrastructure to actually create a new application, right? So all of this needs to have a knowledge from the application developer while the product is being built. It is a technical role, okay? Basically focused on latest application development frameworks. So when I say latest application development frameworks, you can think about something like the different JavaScript framework like Node.js, AngularJS, Quarkus, right? And obviously Python still exists, right? It's undoubtedly one of the most popular languages. But again, it's more towards the cloud native side where you develop applications which are stateless, right? So you should have an overall idea about the latest application framework so that you can make an informed decision on what framework to use for what product and what features. Okay. Now, just wanted to focus my attention to one more role before I go into some of the question and answers. One is the security and compliance engineer. Remember, when it comes to DevOps, right? Uh, People usually think that security is not important, but many of you might have heard about another word called as DevSecOps, right? But please remember, when we talk about DevOps, right, it's not just about developers and operations team. It's about security as well. It's about those who are working in the network operations center or NOC, those who are actually managing your databases, right? So DevOps is not limited only to developers and operations. It's actually goes beyond developers and operations and covers your entire organizational roles, right? Now, when it comes to security and compliance engineer, it's mostly about how the industry-wide compliances and regulations are known to this person, right? So, when we make online payments, right? Many of you might have read something called as PCI, right? Payment Card Industry DSS, PCI DSS. That means it's a regulation or a compliance, right? So any application which actually does a financial transaction needs to comply with that PCI DSS compliances. Okay. So as a security and compliance engineer, you must have an understanding of those different compliances and regulations used in the different industries, right? Um, and all the products which your developers and testers develop are in compliance with the industry standards, right? You cannot actually think about security as a last mile thing. You should include security early enough in the development process. Okay, so that's why I mentioned it clearly here. The security and compliance engineer must collaborate with developers to bake in security early during the development process. What do you mean by bake in? It must be from day one of the development itself. It is not the responsibility of the system administrator or the operations team to add a security layer on top of the application. It is the responsibility of the application developer itself, right? So the security and compliance engineer will make sure that application developer understands the importance of security and do things or develop everything with security in mind, right? And make security test suites part of the software development life cycle, right? At every stage of your development, uh, you should give awareness to your developer team and testers to make sure the security test suites are also being done, right? It could be like a pen test, the penetration testing, or it could be static code analysis or anything. but make sure that security is taken care. It is a highly technical role, okay, with deep knowledge of compliance and regulatory requirements, right? And this could be not just limited to application level security, but also the infrastructure level security, cloud level security, right? So those who are working in public clouds like Amazon, Google, Azure, etc., would know why do you need to use virtual private cloud, or why to use security groups, rules, right? What is the importance of identity and access management, right? So all of these are actually very important when it comes to running your applications in a publicly accessible environment, whether it is public cloud or private cloud or virtual infrastructure or on, right? So it's a highly technical role. Okay. So I understand we are almost 30 minutes into our session. So Gio and Sijin, do we have any questions in the Q&A?
Yes, Sreejith, we have few questions.
Okay, so I will just come out of the screen and maybe take one or two questions right now,
Yeah,
which I believe
few
can
of them we
answer.
answered. They are not related directly to your presentation, so we answered them. You have answered them, but there are some pertaining to yours. That is
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
So I will answer some of these right now. So Muhammad Sinan has a question on what is SRE. So Muhammad, SRE expands to site reliability engineering. I will have a slide later on, so I will spend a couple of more minutes when I reach to that slide later. Okay, so thanks for your question. Surya has a question. If we develop application for need to study coding, Surya, yes. When I say developing applications, yes, you need to have some level of expertise on some frameworks. It could be C, it could be C++, it could be .NET, C Sharp, it could be Java, it could be object-oriented, right? So yes, when we talk about application developer, especially from a DevOps perspective, yes, you need to have some level of knowledge on how to do coding. Okay. Pavan has a comment to Pankaj on on-premises means private cloud. So Pavan, yes, on-premises means private cloud plus maybe a virtual infrastructure wherein you use KVM or VMware or Red Hat virtualization, or it could be the data center where you manage your bare metal servers or physical servers. Um, okay, so thanks, Pavan, for answering Pankaj's question. So Majesh has a question. Can you please distinguish SRE and DevOps role? So Majesh, I'm parking it for later because I'm anyways going to discuss about SRE later. Can you please explain about the scope of DevOps engineer and what are the companies can we get jobs? So Premchand, probably I will remember this question, but it's best answered later, okay? Because it's a broad question and requires more than 2 or 3 minutes to answer. So I believe I took all the questions. Sijin, so I'm going back to my presentation. But keep the questions coming in so that we can make it more interactive. Right. So that was regarding security and compliance engineer. Like I said, right, uh, you probably would see job descriptions wherein it is mentioned about DevSecOps, right, and all. So DevSecOps nothing but making sure that security is part of the standard DevOps processes, which is there, but some people would like to call it out. Okay. Uh, Now, coming to another important role, which is also aligned to more towards how you experience the product or features, right? So it's called as user experience interface expert or UI UX. Okay. So this role makes sure that the product and the features can be experienced smoothly and intuitively. I actually made intuitively in an italicized format because the word intuitive is very critical here, right? So think about an application which you use in your mobile, right? And think why you use that application. Or maybe you are actually going to use a new application in mobile. Why do you think you are interested in that application? So These days, people use applications based on how easy it is to use, right? Whether it is mobile based application or web based application, every application should be self-guiding, right? You don't need to actually be given 10 minutes of teaching on how to use the user interface and all, right? And you may know, if you actually use some of the applications, when you use it for the first time, there will be some guidance on, okay, this is a tab for doing this is a tab for doing that. But in my personal opinion, right, if you have a great user interface, right, you don't need any guidance. People will be able to guess what it does, right? So if you think about some of the web portals like Amazon, right? So Amazon undoubtedly has one of the best web-based interfaces. Okay, if you look at another portal like Airbnb, right, which is travel and boarding. It's more like boarding portal, right, wherein you can find hotels run by individuals, right? Airbnb has one of the great user interfaces, right? So what does that mean? You'd spend less time on accessing the application because it is easy to understand where to go and do the and experience those features, right? So this user experience interface expert makes sure that the product which the application developer develops, right, and the testers test can be experienced in a seamless manner. Okay, and also need to make sure that all the features which are requested in the product is there in the final product when it goes to production. Okay, and the QA means quality assurance, is tied to the customer experience, right? So customer experience is very, very critical these days, okay? Because the moment you feel that the application is not behaving like you expected it to be, you will actually stop using that application and go to another application, because for every functionality, there are multiple applications available, right? So many of you may be users of Uber, right? If you don't like Uber, you have Ola or any other taxi riding apps, right? So there are a lot of competitions out there wherein it's not just about using one vendor, you have multiple vendors. So customer experience is very, very important, right? This is a technical slash semi-technical role, okay? And this is relatively a new role in the sense it is there in the market only for the last 6 to 7 years. Okay, many of you might actually also read it as something like design experts. Okay, because user interface design experts, right? Now, how do you want the user interface to behave when you respond, right? When you input some values, right? So all of those are very, very critical when it comes to customer experience or user experience. So this is also another role which we see the job market is requesting these days, and we also have a lot of roles like this within Red Hat, right? So, like I said, right, it's an evolving role. It's been there only for the last 4 to 5 years. Another important role as part of DevOps is called as release engineer or manager. Okay, most of the times people call it as RE. Okay, uh, it's more like a extended role wherein the person acts as a management or coordinator between the development team, the operations team, the security team. You say it right. So this person actually coordinates the product from the initial development phase to finally it handed over to the customer's hand, that is production, right? And this role also facilitate continuous delivery. Okay, continuous delivery means how frequently you can actually develop a new feature, test it, make sure that it is secure, then pass it over different environments like developer testing, quality assurance, performance stress testing, staging, and finally even to production, right? So this role has responsibility of end-to-end application delivery tool chain. Okay, it's a highly technical role. Okay, and when you compare it with the traditional project manager, right, it's a technical role, a release engineer, right, and it also has a lot of ownership, right. So this person will be responsible for releasing the product to production, right. So from staging to production, we need to have approval from this role to go live, right? So RE or release manager is one such role wherein it has a lot of responsibilities, right? And you will also be answerable when things go wrong. Okay? So you will also be answerable to your stakeholders as well as the business. Okay. Now, I remember some of you actually asked about a role called as SRE, right? Site Reliability Engineering. So I thought I would spend some time there. So SRE is also an evolving role. Okay. Like I said about the UI UX, right? SRE is there from maybe around the last 7 to 8 years. In fact, Google introduced this role way back in mid 2000s. Okay. So don't confuse SREs as traditional system administrators or operations team. Okay. SRE is actually bridge between developers and operations team. They act as a bridge. Okay. They also have a lot of hands-on experience and knowledge about how to scale your infrastructure. What do you mean by scaling infrastructure? If you have your current infrastructure with maybe uh, maybe one cluster, how you can actually build a disaster recovery cluster, or from within the same cluster, how you can scale your servers from the existing 7 servers to maybe 9, right? How you can make sure that your infrastructure is resilient and available. What do you mean by resiliency? That means as and when you have more demand, right, customers accessing your applications, you may need to create more applications, and to run those applications, you may need to on demand create more servers, right? So how you do the monitoring, right? How to make sure that, like I said about disaster recovery, right? How to make sure that in the event one cluster goes down or one server goes down or one availability zone goes down, how the availability is being handled, right? So it's a highly technical role, okay, compared to, so I just wanted to mention compared to traditional system administrator, because I copied the earlier slide, I forgot to change it, but read it as compared to traditional system admin. They also need to have knowledge about most of the public cloud providers which are there out there, like AWS, Google, Azure, knowledge about the virtual infrastructure toolings like KVM, VMware. Uh, so, to answer the question about DevOps and SRE go hand in hand. SRE is one of the popular roles within DevOps. Okay, SREs uh, are a natural what do you call extension to some of the DevOps principles. Okay, you cannot replace SRE with DevOps or DevOps with SRE. They go, like I said, right? Most of the organizations these days have SRE as a role, right? So they also need to understand what the developers are speaking, what the operations teams are speaking, right? When I say understand, when developers are talking about some frameworks, right? SRE team needs to understand how the framework should be running, what all settings needs to be configured in the environment for that framework to run. And they also needs to understand the operations teams challenges, right? So, uh, so this role needs to have a blend of both developer as well as operations team, right? Yeah. So I hope I answered the question. And so I have a poll here to understand what is your current role. I see. I actually saw 300 plus members logging in half an hour back. So I believe most of you are still there. So Gio, if you can activate the role, the poll on what is the current role, I appreciate that.
Yes, Sreejith, give me a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it started.
Yeah, so folks, please look at the poll in the Blue Jeans video conferencing. Just wanted to have a quick idea on what roles you are having right now. Okay. Okay. Is it done, Gio?
We are having around 100 votes now. I can
Okay.
end the poll now, I think. But
Okay.
still some votes are coming.
Okay. We'll wait for maybe another 20 seconds.
Yeah. All right. So we have 125 votes
Okay.
and
Perfect.
74% are student.
Okay. So it's more than maybe around 60%, right? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So, I mean, those who are actually still learning, right? I mean, that's a great phase of life, right? So, just wanted to highlight what exactly is DevOps, right? So, many of you may know DevOps is nothing but combination of development and operations, right? But like I said earlier, right, it's not just about development and operations, it's beyond that. You also have quality assurance, that is QA, you'll have security team, you'll have database team, you have business analyst, right? So it's to make DevOps successful, you need to have collaboration among different teams. Now, I just wanted to spend some time on what DevOps is not. Okay. Uh, so these are some of the myths around DevOps. Okay. Uh, People probably would say DevOps is only for startups. It's a myth, right? DevOps can be for established organizations as well. Okay. Uh, so we as in Red Hat is also doing DevOps, though we are in the market for the last close to 30 years. Okay. Large organizations, right, who have been in the market for 50 plus years are also doing DevOps. So it's not only for startups. Another myth is DevOps replaces Agile. No, DevOps is a natural continuation to Agile. Agile is a methodology. Okay, we have different Agile frameworks like Scrum, Safe, and all those, right? So DevOps is not a replacement for Agile. It's a continuation of Agile. And another myth which we often hear is it's all developers and no ops. Please remember, many of the roles which I mentioned earlier, especially the role like SRE, right, release engineering, right, they are all part of both dev and ops. So it's not just about developers only. Okay. And some people think that DevOps is all about automation. It's just about automation. Please remember, automation is required, but it's not just automation. Okay. You need to have something beyond automation as well. Okay. Automation is critical, but DevOps is not all about automation. Okay. And some people would think DevOps is a tool or a product. So please remember, DevOps is not a tool. There is no one single vendor who can actually give you a DevOps tool and say that all your problems will be solved with this tool, right? So DevOps is not a single tool or a product. Like I said earlier, it's a combination of multiple tools from different vendors and how you use it effectively in a collaborative manner. Okay. So what is that DevOps trying to achieve? DevOps is trying to remove this wall. Okay, you see a wall here, and you know this wall exists between developers and operations. And what is this wall all about? It's a hindrance, right? That means developers will develop the applications and will hand it over to ops. Ops will actually try to deploy it in the environment. It may work, it may not work, but there is no collaboration among them, right? So there is a wall which limits them from collaborating, right? So it's if it is just about developers and operations, it's it's still kind of not that bad. But is it only developers and operations? No, you have quality assurance team, you have release engineering team, right? So what if you have walls among all these teams? What if you have teams which uh, are not communicating among each other at all? Developers have no communication with QA, QA have no communication with release engineering or any other teams, right? So you have many walls. So what happens? There are more walls. And what happens when you throw over the wall? What do you mean by throwing over the wall? When developers throw a developed application or a feature over the wall, what does operations say? I want stability, right? I can't actually make change to my operating environment. So your application is requiring me to make changes to the environment. I can't do it because I want a stable environment. So what do? They throw it back to the developers, and developers become angry because developers would say it worked in my development environment and it should work in operating environment as well. But for some reason, this is what is happening in a non-DevOps environment, right? So developers change. I have business requirement to make a change, and I want change. So to make that change, the change has been done in my side. You need to deploy it. I don't care whether you change environment or not. So that is a typical mindset when you have walls. Now, when it comes to multiple teams, you see here, right? The more the teams and the more the walls between them, you have a complete mess, right? So what is DevOps trying to achieve? It is trying to break the walls, right? So remember, the application developer developing a code, it doesn't offer any value until it is in the customer's hand or until it is in production, right? So just because you say that it worked in my environment or it worked in testing or staging doesn't mean that it is a valuable code, right? You need to have synchronization with operations team and others when you want to add new features or go with innovation, right? So you need to go beyond continuous integration. What do you mean by continuous integration? When the business requires a new feature, you integrate that feature as part of your product and do the testing and all. But it's not just about integrating that feature in your own environment and testing it. You need to deliver it, right? You need to deliver it in different environments like staging. You need to do stress testing, then finally to production, right? And you also need to learn from early feedback, right? So you should have a mechanism wherein you can actually collect feedback from your internal stakeholders and customers so that you can have more frequent deployment cycles. That means if you have new features being released currently in 3 months, with this DevOps kind of an approach, you will be able to break it down and make it available in 1 week, right? So every week you will have new releases happening and new features being added for customers to consume. So how do we adopt DevOps, right? So I've talked about different roles. I had a brief discussion around the issues with DevOps and the myths around DevOps and how you can successfully adopt DevOps as an individual or as an organization, right? So many of you might have heard about Gartner, right? The analyst. So Gartner defines DevOps as a change in IT culture. Okay. So it's not just about you learning automation or you using public cloud or you use different frameworks which are cloud native. It's about how you are actually able to embrace the new way of working, right? IT culture. So the students who are out there, right, uh, as per the poll, we realize that close to 70% are students, right? So how many of you actually are using some of the development methodologies like using a source control manager like GitLab or Git or GitHub.com, etc., right? If not, you should start using it, right? Because all those tools actually help you cultivate a habit of collaboration in the public, right? So, what are the industry adopted technical practices for DevOps? One is infrastructure as code. What do you mean by infrastructure as code? Any infrastructure based deployment you write as a code. So classical examples are maybe Ansible playbooks or chef cookbooks or Terraform based manifest, right? So you can actually write those uh, scripts as a code and make it available to a centralized source control manager like Git, so that you can develop collaboratively and you can actually do version control and rollback and all those features. Do CI and CD, that means continuous integration and continuous delivery slash deployment, so that you can have new features being made available to the customer hands in a faster way. And automated testing is a must. At every stages of your application development, you need to make sure that you are doing the testing. Okay. So this is a snapshot of how you can do continuous integration and continuous delivery. So this is a software development lifecycle. As a developer, you start the coding here. You would do the build, package, test, release, monitor, and operate. Right. So this is a software delivery supply chain pipeline. And how do you use that? You as a developer or an operations team or a DevOps role, you would be doing everything in Git. So this is icon for Git. Git is a source control manager. I think many of you heard about github.com, right? So think of it as that source control manager. And what do? You continuously do the building, packaging, and make it available to a repository. It could be a repository like an Access or JFrog or something. Then you also, not just about releasing it, you need to do monitoring, right? And from a uh, deployment environment perspective, you can deploy it in your hybrid cloud, whether it is public cloud environment or private cloud or virtual infrastructure or your bare metal. And I just wanted to touch upon something called as containers, right? So if you embrace containers as part of your DevOps journey, it becomes easy to develop, build, and deploy this code in an automated fashion. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight two different pipelines. One is the Jenkins pipeline. So this is the blue ocean screenshot. The next one is Tecton pipeline, which is container native pipeline. We call it as uh, Kubernetes native. Okay. Now, what are some of the DevOps enablers you see here? For centralization and version control, you can use tools like Git or Subversion. I highly recommend Git. For continuous integration, you have automation build servers like Jenkins, Travis CI, Bamboo, etc. For automation and orchestration, you have Ansible, Puppet, right? From an infrastructure as a service perspective, you have OpenStack, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Platform as a Service, you have Google App Engine, Red Hat OpenShift. Microservices based apps, you have Docker, Kubernetes. Okay. For artifact repository, you have Nexus, JFrog, and for ITIS, you have ServiceNow and Jira. Okay. Now, I just wanted to speak about containers and automation. Okay. Containers and automation have become a default and de facto skill set for your DevOps journey. Okay. Be it any vendor, right? If you talk about Amazons or Googles or Facebooks, they all have applications built as containers. Okay, and they're also heavily automated, right? And for these two, containers and automation, Linux is the foundation. Okay, okay. So we in Red Hat call it like Linux equal to containers or containers are Linux, right? So any DevOps role, the fundamental skill is automation tooling. So when I talk about automation tooling, it could be any automation tool. Okay. And most of the automations, 99% of the automations are triggered from a Linux server. Okay. So it's important to have Linux level knowledge. Okay. And I talked about continuous integration delivery earlier. So it's continuous everything, whether it is continuous feedback, integration, delivery, or deployment, right? And when you talk about containers, I just want to spend some time on container runtimes. So I'm sure that out of these 300 plus attendees, right, some of you are already familiar with some container runtimes like Docker, right? So for your information, right, from the from couple of years back, from 2017 onwards, right, uh, many of the vendors and organizations are moving away from Docker container runtime to newer runtimes like CRYO. CRYO means container runtime interface or initiative, which is open. Okay, people are also moving to tools like Podman, which is more modern, safe, and it is a daemonless container runtime. So that's in terms of safety and security, Podman and CRYO are far, far better than Docker. And also we see automation also using container, right? Containerized automation for hybrid cloud. So when you talk about Ansible, Ansible Tower, right? All of those are actually using containerized environments. Okay. So Podman replacing Docker CLI and CRYO replacing Docker Daemon. It was there from RHEL 8, but you know the latest version of RHEL is RHEL 9, and the Ansible version is Ansible Automation 2, right? So I know for the fact that IPSR runs all these Red Hat based trainings in the latest versions of RHEL as well as Ansible, right? So we have upgraded all our courses to RHEL 9 and Ansible Automation Platform 2. So in case you're already certified in earlier versions of RHEL and Ansible, it's high time you update your skill sets to the latest version, because there are changes which are there in the latest version. And changes are always uh, a good thing, right? Because, you know, as the industry moves to an hybrid cloud model, right, it's important that you also embrace change, right? So I just wanted to spend the next maybe 10 minutes to show you some uh, UI based demonstrations for some of the tools which I showed in the slide. Okay. Um, Peeping at the question and answers, I see there are some more questions. I will answer it later. We have a dedicated 15-minute session. Okay. So, but let me now show you something called as OpenShift. Okay. So many of you may be already familiar with OpenShift. So can I get a quick response on the chat whether you are familiar with OpenShift? How many of you are familiar with Kubernetes or OpenShift? If you heard my question, please make some noise in the chat, not on the Q&A. Okay. I don't see any response. So, okay. So I see Akhil, Abhishek, etc. raising hands. Okay. Good to know that. All right. So OpenShift is nothing but a container platform from Red Hat. Okay. We call it as enterprise Kubernetes. Okay. So remember I talked about something called as Git earlier, right? So this is a GitLab uh, tool which is uh, created by me today morning just for this demonstration purpose. So you see here like updated 8 hours ago, right? So I created some projects within GitLab to show you some demo. Now what you see here is when I go to my OpenShift container platform UI, so this is a user interface. If I may increase the font size, go to the left hand side, you see something called as pipelines, and going to the pipelines, you see some pipelines in my project. So let me take this project. You see there is a pipeline here, right? So you remember the software development lifecycle which I talked earlier, like wherein we start with the development, then you have testing, then you have release engineering, then you do monitoring, then you do operations, right? So what is that software development lifecycle? So this is how it looks like. You see here, you fetch the application from the repository, like you do a git clone, you do a Maven build. So if you are using a Java based application, it usually uses Maven. Okay. So once you do the application build, you can actually do a baking. So baking is a stage wherein you actually create a containerized image. Okay. So anything before you deploy as a container, you need to create a container image. And once the image is created, you need to actually deploy it, right? Maybe deploy it in your test environment or staging environment, right? And then you finally need to verify that. So this is a pipeline or a continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline wherein you can create as part of Kubernetes. Okay. So you can create tasks. You see here, I can create a new task like this. Okay. I create the task, and what I do, I can create pipelines. How? Go to create, click on pipeline. You add the task. You click on add task, find out the task you created and add it. So this way you will actually be able to create your pipelines so that it will be run in a sequential order, right? So Kubernetes or the container platform will actually help you embrace DevOps so that it can satisfy your continuous integration and continuous delivery slash deployment requirements. Okay. So I can run this pipeline if I want. What I do, I click on here and click on start. Okay. You can actually give the details and finally give a start. Right? It will actually just run the pipeline. So if I want to rerun it, what I do here, I click here, actions, rerun. It will run the pipeline again. So what is it doing? It is fetching the application code from the Git. Once the application code is fetched, it will actually run a Maven build. So if I want to get more details, I click there. It is doing the cloning, right? It is now doing the build. You see here, click on it, you get to see how it is being built, right? So this is natively available in OpenShift, which is our Kubernetes runtime. Okay. And let's actually also see how to deploy a new application. So if I go to developer and let me actually go to my test environment, or maybe I will do the staging. Okay, I don't see any applications in my stage environment. So what I do is I'm going to add a new application. I look at some of the sample applications, and what I do is let me go and take a basic .NET 6 based application. Okay, .NET 6 application. I'm going to hit create. So what it does, it will actually fetch the .NET 6 application source code from the github.com, then tries to do a build. What is it doing? It is building the application, right? Right, building the application as a container image. Once the build is over, what it does, it will actually deploy this application. So I'm just waiting for the build to be over. Okay, so let's go and look at the topology here. It is still building, right? Once the build is over, you would see that it is getting deployed, right? It's as easy as you pointing your application to your application, you pointing OpenShift to your application source code. We call it as source to image. So what is the benefit of using OpenShift? You don't need to create a container image. OpenShift will actually help you create the container image, right? So it's still running the builds. So let me go and look at the builds on the topology. Yeah, you see there is a tick mark saying that build complete, and the deployment is also complete. So what happens if I click on the deployment? I see it's running. If I look here, so this is my .NET based application which I just deployed. So if you want to test it, okay, look here. I just pasted the URL in the chat. You can copy paste it in your own uh, uh, browser and see it for yourself. Okay. So this is an application which I just built. It's a very basic .NET 6 application, but you see how easy it was to deploy it in OpenShift, right? So like that, you will also be able to deploy your own application. And the good thing is it doesn't stop at application only as a container. You can also deploy applications on top of virtual machines. Okay, so many of you may be familiar with virtualization, right? You know, Kubernetes can not only manage containers, it can also manage virtual machines. Okay, so Let me go and show you how to create a virtual machine in Open. So I'm using one of the Red Hat's courses. We call it as DO316. And this course helps you understand how to create a virtual machine. So if I click on a virtual machine, you see different types of virtual machine templates which are available, like Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Microsoft Windows, Fedora, CentOS, etc. So I'm going to deploy a Fedora VM here. Click on Fedora 34 VM, hit next. Okay, and then I need to give, so when I click on next, it says that Fedora, because it's a community based OS, it is not officially supported, but that's fine because it's a demonstration. I choose the boot source as URL and give the URL for a Fedora virtual machine image. So I'm going to paste that image location here. It's a QCOW image. I believe all of you can see this, though that uh, though the URL, okay, so the URL I gave was a different one. So let me paste the correct URL. I have it here, don't worry. Copy, paste. All right. So this URL, oh, why is it coming here? No, not this one. Paste, paste. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to hit next, and it says all these default things like what is the virtual machine name and all. I'm going to hit create virtual machine. So it says successfully created virtual machine. I'm going to look at the virtual machine details. It says virtual machine is now being provisioned, right? So it is pulling that QCOW image or the template and then starting the virtual machine. So remember, it's not just about running applications as containers. OpenShift can also help you with running applications in virtual machines. So now you look at the console. You see the virtual machine console. You see here, right? So I can open the console in a new window if I wish. So it's very similar to how you create a standard virtual machine, right? So it's waiting for the virtual machine to be up. Because it's a Fedora machine, it is showing you the Linux boot process. So I have the Fedora VM up and running now, right? So just wanted to actually let you know about this as part of a demonstration, right? So that was my last slide and demo. And also there are changes which are coming from an Ansible perspective. And like you see in the slide here, Ansible is going to use containerized execution environments going forward. The Ansible playbook command line interface is now going to be changed to Ansible navigator. So the updated courses of Ansible is already available from Red Hat, and IPSR is already uh, giving the opportunity to learners to upgrade, right? So if you are actually having experience with Ansible from the earlier versions of Ansible, it is high time you get updated so that you stay relevant in the market. With that, I'm going to use the remaining 14 minutes to answer any questions if you have any questions. So Raf,